Hello, writers. Welcome to the lesson on the writing process. So in this lesson, we will go over Aristotle's 5 canons of rhetoric: invention or pre-writing, drafting, revising, and editing and polishing your work. So let's begin. By now, you're probably realizing that Aristotle has a lot to do with our modern writing structure. Adding to his repertoire, Aristotle explains the 5 canons of rhetoric, aka the writing process. So they are invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. This quote from your textbook explains it beautifully. It says, "The speaker should possess the faculties of invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Invention is the devising of matter, true or plausible, that would make the case convincing. Arrangement is the ordering and distribution of the matter, making clear the place to which each thing is to be assigned. Style is the adaptation of suitable words and sentences to the matter devised, and memory is the firm retention in the mind of the matter, words, and arrangement. Delivery is the graceful regulation of voice, countenance, and gesture." So here is a little table on those canons, and then you'll see also the kind of the etymology, where it came from. All right, and then so first is invention or pre-writing, and so this is the first step. But when I was first introduced to the writing process, we called it brainstorming. That's how we were always taught it. And brainstorming could be a big part of the invention or pre-writing process, but it's not all of it. So invention can be free writing, which is writing your stream of consciousness as you think of something, you just write it down. No, a lot of the time you don't stop. I actually have done an exercise where I was timed. I got 3 minutes and I had to just write whatever came to mind, and it was a really productive and interesting exercise. Another thing to do is discuss a potential topic with other students, your teachers, or friends. That's a really helpful part of invention. And of course, researching is also an essential invention tool. So through invention and pre-writing is when we find our argument. That's the kind of the point. So after you have your argument or a good idea for an argument, you can begin drafting your paper. There's many different ways to draft a paper. Sometimes I create an outline of my thesis statement and topic sentences, but that isn't always the case. Sometimes I write the introduction first, or just write down things I know I want to be in the essay. There is no right way to draft a paper. Find what works for you. And we'll go over this again later in the semester when we talk about writing recursively. You'll see that there's no one right way to have for our writing process. You can have many different approaches. So find what works for you. Then once we're done with drafting, we revise. Whether we have peer feedback or instructor feedback, both or nothing, we should read our essay multiple times and revise it, change it. Most likely we'll notice something that we can do differently. Reading my work out loud helps pinpoint weird sentences or convoluted statements. I do this all the time. I'll read an essay, the introduction out loud, and realize that it doesn't make a lot of sense in certain areas, and you also have to think about who's reading it, who your audience is, and if they'll understand what you're trying to convey. So revision is a constant process. Although we have to turn in the paper at some point, we can revise until then. Your paper will thank you, and your grade, usually. But who cares about grades? Just kidding. We all do. All right. And of course, as you can imagine, editing and polishing is the final step before submitting a piece of writing. Whether you're submitting to an employer, an instructor, journal, a friend, etc., you need to read through your paper for grammatical errors. That's just a common thing you should always do. We all make grammatical errors, even people who have been editing and polishing their papers for years, they still make mistakes. It's just a common thing that happens. So we have to make sure we're going over that and looking for them. And a lot of the time we can let somebody else look for them as well. And again, reading it out loud helps too. Sometimes you'll catch a mistake you wouldn't have otherwise caught. All right, so this table from your textbook shows the Aristotelian canons of rhetoric and translates them into our modern writing structure. So this is a good table when thinking about the purpose of each step. So if you look, for example, you have invention as the first one, which is what we discussed as the first step. And it says devising the arguments that will make the case convincing, often basing them on models of famous speeches. So obviously that's a little outdated. We don't exactly do that now. So if you go over to the modern writing process and look at pre-writing, it's determining the thesis, points of argument, counter-argument, and rebuttal, researching evidence to support the argument. So Aristotle, in that time, it was mostly oral writing, or like oral rhetorical works. So now that we have a different way of writing, different modes and methods, and so many, it's not just on paper, there's also still speeches, but there's films and everything that we went over in the genre theory lesson. It's extensive, to say the least. But you'll see, this is how we can compare the 5 canons of rhetoric to our modern writing process. All right, so the summary, we learned in this lesson that writing is a process. That process begins with invention or pre-writing, researching, critical thinking, discussion, free writing. Then we have drafting and revising follow invention. Try to be open-minded about feedback and understand your audience. And then, of course, editing and polishing is the final touches before turning it in. Sometimes you just have to hit that submit button and let it be gone. All right. If you have any questions, of course, I'm always here for you. Thanks.